The KZN Department of Education is investigating the alleged contravention of Disaster Management Act regulations at a Durban school. A pupil who had tested positive for COVID-19 was allegedly to continue writing their exams at that school. That obviously posed a risk, at least to the other pupils as well as the teachers, at least insofar as their ability to contract this virus. Get your sense of what we know about the story. Bring in Karinda Jagmohan. Joins us now via video link from Durban. And Karinda, difficult to believe something like that could happen given how much we know about especially the Delta variant. What else do we know about this case?
Indeed. Well, from what we understand and according to reports on the ground, this happened twice at the school. This happened last month and earlier this month, where a matric pupil, two different matric pupils on the separate occasions, were allowed to enter the school premises despite having been tested for COVID-19 and being allowed to write exams, like you said, posing a risk to their fellow classmates as well as their teachers who could have contracted the virus. It's unclear at this stage what the consequences of that breach of protocol was in terms of who else was infected following those two incidents. But what we know so far is that the Department of Basic Education in KwaZulu-Natal is looking into these incidents, and they did mention in media reports that there are safety protocols to be followed when a pupil or any member of the education department, be it teachers and other staff members, test positive. These include alerting the district management immediately, as well as ensuring isolation of that person, be it a pupil or staff member. And they did mention that writing exams is possible if a person tests positive for COVID-19, providing that all isolation requirements are in place, and this is what needs to be followed once a pupil tests positive for COVID-19. But that's not what we saw at a school in Durban, actually in the Phoenix district of Durban, a secondary school there. And this now just giving rise to, what the consequences of this could be. In KwaZulu-Natal, over the past year, we have seen fluctuating of COVID-19 cases. And actually, we did notice that last month and just after July, so around August, increasing numbers of COVID-19 in KwaZulu-Natal. A lot of this was attributed to the unrest when we saw a number of people, converge into the public spaces without the safety protocols being followed because of the civil unrest there. And later on, earlier this month, actually, we saw schools in Phoenix, parents of pupils who go to schools in the Phoenix area protesting, calling for a brief closure of schools because the high number of COVID-19 cases that we saw stemming at those schools, pupils testing positive for COVID-19. So these are some of the consequences that followed when safety protocols were not followed. But here what we see, though, is that the Department of Education also mentioned this at a legislature sitting earlier this week, where the DA actually brought this to the attention of MPLs, and they had resolved to further call on the SAPS to investigate the contravention of Disaster Management Act regulations. As we know, once a person tests positive for COVID-19, they should be in isolation until for a certain number of days, for a certain period, until we are sure that they are no longer able to pass on the virus to others. So this contravention of Disaster Management Act regulations is now being investigated by the SAPS as well as the Basic Education Department, and we're yet to see what the consequences for the school will be, as well as to hear about what happened after those pupils were allowed into that school establishment, who else was infected, if anybody was further infected, and what will be the consequences for management of that school going forward.
Absolutely. Karinda Jagmohan, thanks very much indeed, who's a pro at keeping a straight face while her phone rings while she's live on air. Live to us there also from Durban in KZN. Karinda, thanks very much indeed.